I didn't move to the mountains looking for trouble. I came here to start over, for quiet mornings, clean air, and a life without HOA letters taped to my door. After the last few years, I'd earned that peace. 3 years ago, I was living in what brochures called one of Northern California's premier communities, gated, landscaped, and supposedly perfect. But beneath the stucco smiles, it was hell. They fined me for everything, leaving a utility trailer in my driveway for 2 hours, repainting my house with the wrong shade of tan. By the end, I'd racked up 37 citations, fought 2 lawsuits, and paid for a mandatory facade correction that cost nearly $500,000. When I finally sold the place, I swore I'd never again let another HOA run my life. So when I found 6 untouched acres in the Sierra Nevada foothills, no neighbors, no rules, just trees and sky, it felt like salvation. Zoned rural residential, clean title, no covenants, no restrictions, just mine. I bought it outright, packed my tools, and started building the kind of home no one could tell me how to live in. For 4 months straight, I lived on site. I wasn't some weekend dreamer paying contractors to handle everything. I managed every delivery, checked every joint and beam, made sure every screw was set right. 2 trailers, 1 for gear, 1 for the crew. Diesel generator humming, motion lights set, 6 security cameras watching every angle. I'd worked long enough around construction to know that an unguarded site is an invitation to thieves. But I wasn't prepared for what really came knocking. It happened on a clear Tuesday morning. I was sipping coffee and reviewing a lumber invoice when I saw a black Escalade ease up to the end of the private road. Nobody should have been there. The only traffic up that ridge was mine. I walked down to meet them. Out stepped a woman in a pastel blazer, hair styled to perfection, flanked by 2 men who looked like they'd just retired from the country club. She smiled like she owned the place. "Good morning. You must be the new owner," she said. "I'm Karen Stein, president of the Silver Pines Reserve Homeowners Association. We just wanted to welcome you to the community." I stared at her deadpan. "I'm not in your community," she gave a laugh that sounded rehearsed. "Oh, well, technically you are. Silver Pines maintains an extended protective boundary around the lake and the Ridge Road. Your lot falls within our oversight." She handed me a folder embossed with their logo. "We'll just need your roof material samples, exterior color plans, 2 gate keys for emergency access, and the one-time initiation fee, $2,500. The arrogance in her tone hit me harder than the mountain wind. I didn't bother arguing. I went to my truck and pulled out a binder. My land deed, zoning maps, aerials, parcel numbers, everything. I opened it and held the page in front of her face. "My property is lot 118B, I said, tapping the line. "This here, that's your boundary." "My land's outside it. The Ridge Road's a private easement from 1983. You have 0 jurisdiction here." Her smile dropped like a curtain. "Well, we believe zoning may have been updated. I'll be checking with the county." "Do what you need," I said quietly. "But if you step foot on this land again, I'll have the sheriff handle it." "You don't own this road, this ridge, or this dirt." "I do." One of her board lackeys muttered something about not needing to be hostile, but she shot him a look and turned back to me. "Very well. But I'd advise you not to make enemies here, Mr. Vanderbrook." "Lucas Vanderbrook. And I'm not here to make friends or enemies. Just a home." They left without another word, their SUV spitting gravel as it rolled away. For a few seconds I thought maybe that was it, but deep down I knew better. People like Karen didn't let go. They came smiling, but they always came back sharper. The first sign something was wrong came a few mornings later. Not noise, silence. The kind of silence that sets off alarms in your head when you're used to the hum of machinery. I stepped outside. No generator thrum, no radio from the cruise trailer. Just still air and the faint smell of ozone and plastic. I followed the scent to the generator. Dead. The cable had been sliced clean through, not frayed, not torn, cut. My stomach turned cold. I checked the material stacks. The drywall pallets? Gone. The flooring? Gone. Cement bags, waterproofing membranes, even the power tools, all missing. Nearly $90,000 in equipment and materials vanished overnight. I sprinted to the camera shed. The lock looked untouched, but when I opened it, the battery backup was ripped out, wires dangling. The DVR showed every feed cutting out at exactly 2:34 a.m. No static, no interference. Just black. Someone had planned this. The crew claimed they'd heard nothing, and I believed them. We were miles from the nearest house, and mountain nights can swallow sound whole, but I still checked for tire tracks, footprints, anything. Nothing. It was like the mountain itself had swallowed my supplies. I sat down on the trailer step, anger tightening behind my eyes. Losing that much gear wasn't just theft, it was a message. By mid-morning, I drove down to the county substation to file a report. The deputy took notes without much interest, promised to send someone by later, and handed me a half-empty cup of stale coffee. I left before I said something I'd regret. If the sheriff wasn't going to help, I'd help myself. I started driving the back roads, tracing the possible exit routes someone might have used. 15 minutes later, I saw it. The HOA's community barn at the edge of their trail system. New siding, fresh paint, and right there, stacked neatly beneath the eaves, rolls of waterproofing wrap. The same make, the same codes, even the same smudge of black marker I'd left when unloading 3 days earlier. That's when I knew. The theft wasn't random. Someone wanted to make a point. Someone from Silver Pines had decided to remind me that out here, even when I parked my truck halfway up the ridge, far enough that the HOA barn sat clear in my view, but not close enough for anyone to see me. I pulled out my DSLR with the telephoto lens and started shooting. Slow, methodical, deliberate. 56 photos total. I zoomed in on the product tags, serial numbers, and batch stamps. Every single code matched the ones listed on my invoices. I time-stamped and geotagged the entire set, then built a folder labeled Evidence. Property Theft, 02:34 a.m. When I called the sheriff's office again, I was calm, precise, and ready. I told the dispatcher I had probable cause to believe stolen property from my construction site had been relocated to the Silver Pines HOA barn. She put me on hold, came back, and said she'd send someone familiar with the community. That someone was Officer Dexter Gray, a name that already told me how this was going to go. When his cruiser pulled up beside the barn, I could tell by the way he moved that he'd been doing this route for decades. He was one of those small-town officers who thought of himself as a peacekeeper between locals and outsiders. Sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, permanent smirk. He glanced over my photos, then turned toward the barn. "The HOA says the materials were abandoned," he said in that deadpan voice that bureaucrats use when they've already decided the outcome. Under County Ordinance 107B, unsecured building materials on undeveloped property can be classified as hazardous debris after 72 hours. I blinked. Hazardous debris? He nodded, without even the courtesy of pretending to care. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly, forcing myself not to raise my voice. "Someone trespasses on my land, cuts my generator cables, disables my cameras, steals close to 90 grand in materials, and you're telling me they rescued trash?" Gray's jaw twitched slightly, but his tone never changed. "Look, Mr. Vanderbrook, this isn't a criminal case. If you want, you can file a complaint with the DA. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a civil issue. The HOA acted within their rights to protect community safety and aesthetics." Then he turned, got in his cruiser, and drove off. I stood there on that dusty trail, watching his taillights fade, and realized the truth. This wasn't incompetence. It was collaboration. The theft wasn't about money. It was a warning. I'd refused to join their little kingdom, and now they were showing me who ruled the mountain. The thing is, people underestimate me when I don't yell. They mistake silence for surrender. But I've been through worse wars than a homeowners association. You can't outpolitic someone who's learned to fight in silence and finish in full. By the time Officer Gray's cruiser disappeared down the bend, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Step 1, document everything. I spent the next 24 hours compiling every receipt, timestamp, invoice, drone image, and email into a single case file. Then I drafted a formal complaint to the Nevada County District Attorney's Office, attaching the photos and highlighting Gray's mishandling of County Ordinance 107B. His hazardous debris excuse wasn't just lazy, it was flat-out false. The ordinance had nothing to do with seizing private property. Step 2. Find proof they couldn't bury. I contacted Dean Caruso, an old contact from Sacramento, ex-FBI, now a private investigator specializing in digital forensics. The man could recover deleted footage from a microwave if you gave him 5 minutes. I mailed him my DVR and damaged power module overnight. Step 3. Expose them publicly. I called Charlie Ortega, an investigative journalist for the Sierra Valley Ledger. I'd helped him once when the city tried to condemn his grandmother's duplex for a bogus development project. He owed me one. When I told him what happened, he let out a low whistle. They stole your construction site and rebuilt an HOA barn with your gear? That's not a dispute, Luke. That's a racket. Exactly, I said. And they've got cops and inspectors running cover for them. Within 2 days, Dean got back to me. He'd salvaged partial security footage from the corrupted drive. The video was glitchy but clear enough to see the truth. A flatbed truck creeping onto my property at 2:31 a.m. Headlights off. 3 figures: gloves, masks, and professional precision. But one of them slipped up. A limp in his right leg and a faint tattoo visible when he reached under the floodlight. A cross inside a gear. Dean ran the image through his database and called me within the hour. Got him, he said. Tattoo belongs to Bryce Coleman, local contractor, member of the Silver Pines HOA board, also listed as the registered manager for the Silver Pines Community Barn Improvement Fund. Bryce. I'd seen him before, standing beside Karen Stein the first day they showed up. The type of man who calls himself a logistics consultant but couldn't hammer a nail straight. Dean didn't stop there. He traced the GPS metadata from the stolen camera's backup unit. After being yanked from my shed, it was transported directly to a garage 2 miles away, registered to the husband of the HOA treasurer. That was the missing link. I called Charlie again. You ready to go public? Already writing, he said. 12 hours. By sunrise, the Ledger had published the headline, Veteran Builder Targeted by HOA, $89,000 in stolen materials tied to board members. The story spread like wildfire. HOA message boards lit up. Anonymous members started reaching out. One email came from a burner account with the subject line, You're not the first. Attached were screenshots of internal emails between the board officers. One in particular made my blood run cold. If he doesn't join, treat him like the last guy. Drown him in notices and violations until he folds or sues. We've got deeper pockets. Don't let up. Another message showed Karen forwarding my building permits to a city inspector named Louis Tiger, adding, Find something, anything. Get him flagged. Charlie dug into the inspector's background and discovered Louis had received over $12,000 in donations from the Silver Pines Beautification League, a non-profit run by Karen herself. No website, no programs, just one checking account linked directly to the HOA's. The footage had already tied a named HOA board member directly to the theft. But what came next broke the case wide open. Charlie called me one night, his voice low but shaking with adrenaline. Luke, you need to hear this. He'd gotten a voicemail from a woman, her identity hidden, voice filtered beyond recognition. She'd sent over an audio clip, something she said had been shared privately among the board. The recording started with laughter. Karen Stein's laughter. Sharp, smug, unmistakable. Then her voice came through, If he tries to sue, we'll say it's community property. It's not like anyone can prove what came from where. It's just lumber and boxes. Besides, nobody's going to miss supplies from some random trailer. If he wanted protection, he should have joined. I replayed it 5 times, each pass tightening the muscles in my jaw. That wasn't arrogance anymore. That was intent. They thought I'd back down, that I'd fold like everyone else who dared to defy their authority. They were wrong. I'd faced insurgents with stronger moral codes than this HOA syndicate. Now I had everything. Proof of theft, digital forensics, GPS tracking, bribery connections, and now a recorded confession. They wanted a war. They'd just declared it. By morning, I'd assembled the full case package. Every image, email, timestamp, and transcript printed, copied, and stored in 3 separate locations. I sent one set to my attorney, another to the district attorney's office, and one directly to the Department of Justice's regional field office. The silence that followed was deafening. No knocks, no threats, no late-night trucks. Just stillness. But it wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm breaks. 3 days later, the storm arrived. The call came from Aisha Grant, Assistant District Attorney for Nevada County. Her tone was calm, clipped, and all business. "Mr. Vanderbrook, we've reviewed your submission," she said. "We're opening a formal criminal investigation. However, due to the financial scope and potential collusion between public officials and private entities, I'm forwarding the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento. This may have federal implications." She paused. "The total loss exceeds $75,000. You've provided evidence suggesting law enforcement complicity and falsified regulatory actions. If your drone footage holds, we're also looking at federal land record fraud." Then she added, almost quietly, "This is no longer about missing building supplies." That's when I knew. The game had shifted. The next week was chaos in motion. My attorney, Dana Ellis, fierce and unflinching, began coordinating directly with federal prosecutors. Dean, my investigator, drafted his affidavit. Charlie worked his press contacts, preparing a follow-up story. When the second article hit the Sierra Valley Ledger, it was explosive. Headline: HOA board members under federal review after builder theft allegations. Within hours, social media lit up, and homeowners from nearby communities started sharing their own horror stories. One leaked email in particular became the rallying cry, "The vet's bluffing. Nobody's crazy enough to take an HOA to court. We'll drown him in filings. He'll cave or go broke." That message aged badly. 3 days later, my phone rang again. This time, it was a calm voice identifying himself as Special Agent Mercer from the Sacramento FBI field office. "Mr. Vanderbrook, your evidence has triggered a joint corruption probe. We're coordinating with DOJ Property Crimes. You'll be contacted by our task force shortly." That was the last moment I had to breathe before the hammer dropped. The raids began before sunrise. Unmarked black SUVs glided into Silver Pines like ghosts. Neighbors peeked from windows as agents poured into Karen Stein's immaculate home. Laptops, tablets, file boxes, all seized. Even her gaudy lifetime HOA president plaque ended up in an evidence bag. According to the search affidavit, agents found encrypted minutes from private board meetings, forged invoices, and a document titled Community Risk Index, a list of problem residents. My name sat at the top, circled in red ink. Next was Bryce Coleman, the board member caught on camera with the stolen supplies. They nabbed him at a job site, zip-tied and stunned. His office computer revealed falsified donation records and a ledger marking a bulk delivery 3 days after my theft, labeled simply Community Contribution. Then came Officer Dexter Gray and Inspector Louis Traeger. Both were taken into custody within 24 hours. Traeger tried to claim he'd acted for safety reasons, but investigators found a trail of suspicious Venmo payments, each marked with emojis, a tree, a hammer, and a handshake. Subtle. Gray's arrest hit harder. Agents found a sealed envelope in his home safe containing a doctored parcel map of my property. The same one Karen had insisted was updated by the county assessor. Forensic analysts confirmed it had been digitally altered and printed on counterfeit county letterhead. And then came the financial bombshell, the so-called Silver Pines beautification. League, Karen's sham nonprofit, had been used to launder more than $90,000 through a Nevada shell corporation tied to her late husband's old law partner. It was a money-washing carousel disguised as community improvements. By Friday, 7 people were indicted. Karen Stein, conspiracy, grand larceny, mail and wire fraud, obstruction of justice. Bryce Coleman, theft of property, receiving stolen goods, and falsifying records. Officer Gray and Inspector Traeger, abuse of authority, bribery, and participation in a criminal conspiracy. 3 additional board members, collusion and financial misconduct. Federal prosecutors moved faster than anyone expected, citing the breach of public trust and deliberate cover-up involving local law enforcement. The court granted an emergency injunction, placing the Silver Pines HOA under federal receivership. Their accounts were frozen. Their power evaporated overnight. That night, I stood at the edge of my half-built home, watching the ridgeline glow faintly under the moon. The lake below shimmered like polished glass. For the first time since I'd broken ground, the air felt clean. No engines, no whispers, no trespassers. They came for me thinking I was just another defiant homeowner in over his head. But I'd seen worse systems of control fall apart under their own arrogance. The next month, the trial began. The courthouse overflowed. Reporters, residents, even rival HOA reps from nearby counties eager to witness the fall of Silver Pines. The tension was thick, like static before a lightning strike. I sat beside Dana, calm, silent, ready. She wore no designer armor, just a gray blazer and the kind of confidence that cuts like glass. Across the aisle sat Karen Stein, pale and rigid, her smile gone. Her legal team, 4 attorneys deep, tried to look composed, but the fear was there, flickering behind their eyes. The judge, Leonard J. Leone, was notorious for his zero-patience court. "I will not tolerate grandstanding," the judge warned, and right then, I knew I liked him. The courtroom wasn't a stage to him. It was a firing range, and he didn't miss. Over the next 5 days, the prosecution built a case so tight you could bounce a quarter off it. They had it all: timestamps, invoices, drone footage, and digital forensics. The jury watched the footage like a movie. Bryce Coleman hobbling across my lot with stolen plywood slung over his back, looking like some criminal Santa delivering stolen gifts. His lawyer tried to argue it was a community retrieval operation. Even the stenographer chuckled. Then came the hammer, Karen's recorded call. Her voice smug and dismissive. "If he sues, we'll just claim it's communal. Nobody can prove what's his." Dana replayed it twice, letting the silence hang heavy enough to choke the room. You could see it in the jurors' eyes, that shift when disbelief turns to disgust, but the financial trail sealed the coffin. The FBI displayed a digital flowchart: arrows, dates, account numbers. HOA funds funneled through that fake Beautification League nonprofit, then dispersed as maintenance reimbursements to Gray, Traeger, and Coleman. One fake company even had the absurd name Community Asset Recovery Services. One transaction only, logged the day after my site was looted. You could practically feel the temperature in the room drop. Inspector Traeger sweated through his collar. Officer Gray stared ahead like he'd been hollowed out. Bryce couldn't stop tapping his leg, that limp betraying him again. And Karen, she cracked on the 4th day. Not with rage, with panic. On the stand, while Dana pressed her about the forged parcel map claiming my property as part of HOA jurisdiction, she broke down crying. Between sobs, she muttered something about keeping order and protecting community image. No one bought it. The jury's faces stayed carved from stone. Deliberation didn't even last half a workday. The verdict came back fast and brutal. Guilty on every count. Karen Stein, sentenced to 12 years with no parole. Coleman, 8 years and a mountain of civil penalties. Gray got 7. Traeger, 6. The remaining board members were fined, stripped of office, and ordered to complete supervised community labor. The irony was perfect, cleaning up the same kind of messes they once weaponized against others. Then came restitution. The judge didn't just make them repay the $89,000. He tripled it, cited malicious intent and coordinated abuse of public trust. With emotional damages, legal fees, and construction loss added, the total came to $330,000. Dana leaned in with a grin and whispered, "Want to repaint the place HOA beige just to rub it in?" I laughed. "Nah," I said, "I'll build something better." When we stepped out of the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered. Not protesters, neighbors. Some held handwritten signs, "Silver Pines doesn't speak for me." Others just looked relieved. One older woman walked up, handed me a still warm peach pie and said, "I didn't know what they were doing. Thank you for standing up." I took it with both hands. The crust smelled like butter and cinnamon. Sometimes justice has a scent, and it's sweet. What nobody tells you about winning is what happens after. That strange, hollow quiet once the noise fades. The reporters leave, the flashbulbs die, and you're standing alone with nothing but open sky. That night I walked the ridge behind my property. The stars burned sharp and clear. No hum of generators, no HOA patrol trucks idling nearby. Just peace. The kind I hadn't felt in months. 2 weeks later, construction resumed. Smaller crew, tighter schedule, better energy. I threw myself into it. Hands blistered, lungs full of sawdust and freedom. Every nail I drove felt like reclaiming something they'd tried to take. The house rose tall, cathedral ceilings, clean lines, exposed wood beams that caught the sunset. It wasn't built for approval. It was built for me. When it was done, I crafted one last piece, a brushed steel sign welded to a reclaimed oak base. No ornament, no color, just 4 words cut deep into metal, not HOA property. Below that, smaller, I was just building. I bolted it to the gate and stood back. It wasn't anger. It was closure. A week later, the new court-appointed HOA administrator reached out. A polite, soft-spoken accountant named Eric said he wanted to meet, talk about rebuilding community trust. I declined. Not out of spite, just finality. I'd fought my war. My side of the fence was quiet now, and that's how I liked it. But the aftermath rippled wider than I expected. Word spread. Homeowners started withdrawing from the HOA. By majority vote, the association's mandatory status was dissolved. For the first time, Silver Pines wasn't a private kingdom. Just a few weeks after the trial, a retired Navy vet from up near Western Ridge stopped by one afternoon. He showed up with a 6-pack, sunburned smile, and the easy confidence of a man who's seen his share of storms. "You're the guy who took down the HOA, right?" he said, handing me a cold one. "About damn time someone did. Respect." We sat for a bit on the porch, watching the lake catch the light, talking about small-town politics and how power makes people forget decency. Before he left, he raised his can in a quiet salute. That meant more than any headline ever could. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten. No return address. The note inside was short. "Your fight reminded me that property lines are more than fences. They're freedom. You made a lot of us remember who actually owns the dirt under our feet." It was signed only with initials. I pinned it above my workbench. Then, strangely enough, a letter came from prison, from Inspector Traeger. It was half apology, half explanation. He admitted Karen had leaned on him, said things like community harmony and local discretion, until he stopped seeing the line between helping and breaking the law. He wrote, "I was wrong. You were right to stand your ground. But for what it's worth, that house you built is damn fine work." I didn't know whether to laugh or shake my head. Maybe both, but he wasn't wrong. It had turned out better than I ever imagined. 6 months later, I heard it. That faint electric whine above the tree line. A drone. Too smooth to be an insect, too steady to be random. It hovered, scanning my property like a mechanical vulture. I stood still on the porch, mug of coffee in hand, eyes locked on it. I didn't wave, didn't move, just let it know I'd seen it. Eventually, it drifted off, disappearing into the blue. 10 minutes later, I heard tires on gravel. A gray sedan rolled up to the gate. Out stepped a guy in khakis, hair too perfect for country air, carrying a clipboard and a corporate grin. His polo shirt read, "Silver Pines Legacy Development." That alone made my jaw tighten. "Morning," he chirped. "We're conducting a community outreach survey about our new regional growth initiative." "No," I said flatly. He blinked. I haven't even explained." "Doesn't matter. Not interested. Shut the gate on your way out." He tried the salesman's chuckle, that smarmy charm that's supposed to disarm people. "We're just exploring ideas for shared access trails, green zoning, maybe even a revitalized—" "Stop right there," I cut in. "I've been revitalized enough for one lifetime." I started walking back to the porch, then paused halfway and turned. "Tell your boss if he's got a vision, he can try pitching it after the thaw. That's when I'm putting barbed wire back on the fence." He left, quietly. Gate closed. Inside, sunlight spilled over the concrete countertops, the same ones I'd